The case against Richard Allen as the Delphi murderer, it is continuing on, on the rails, I guess a little more on the rails than it has been, as it's gone off the rails so many times. We're on a whole different track now, I think, though. Joining me to discuss, Jennifer Coffindaffer, retired FBI special agent. One of the big things that we're hearing, again, is the confession over 60 times during his 22 months in custody. Of course, we're questioning, his state of mind. This man was literally eating his own feces at some point in time. So how well does that stand up as far as a valid confession? There's so many questions as this case gets closer to going to trial. What are your thoughts on the latest hearing and where we're going with this?
Well, a couple of things. Anytime somebody confesses to a loved one that's overheard on a monitored phone line, anytime somebody says something to somebody in a locked up facility that's unsolicited, in other words, this wasn't a law enforcement twisting his arm. These were supposed voluntary type confessions. I think they have a lot of credence.
Yeah.
Of course, the issue is and I think I can't imagine anyone not subscribing to this except for maybe Judge Gold and the prosecution team. He was yanked from being a CVS pharmacist, had a wife, had a daughter, all was well in the world, and thrown in a maximum security prison in complete lockup for 23 hours, Tony. This is unheard of for somebody who has not been convicted of a crime
Yeah.
and who wouldn't go nuts. If you've seen pictures, I mean, there usually aren't windows. I mean, you're in a teeny tiny cell. I think his was 9 by 7, or approximately 9 by 7, and you're all by yourself.
Hmm.
You're not doing anything for 23 hours a day after being just your normal, you know, accused murderer citizen. So could that drive somebody crazy? Well,
Hmm.
I think it could. I mean, he was supposedly eating papers. He couldn't meet with his attorneys, which is a total
Hmm.
appealable situation, I think, in
Yeah.
this. And I know now, Tony, they're moving him finally to a county facility.
Yeah.
I mean, it's taken all this time, and I think it's way too little too late. I think this case has a lot of issues, but if he confessed, those confessions might be quite real, and he may have done this.
I think it's a very valid question. I mean, we don't know. He may have done this. Now, does that negate all of the mishandling of this case? No, not at all. I mean, that's what I think puts a lot of this into question. It's just the procedure of how they've been handling this guy. Where if he did do this, he could possibly walk because of the way that he's been handled from day one.
Yeah, no, this case, and it has so many issues too. If you read the probable cause affidavit, in my opinion, it was sorely lacking in terms of credible witness statements. In particular, I never did see the probable cause affidavit. I don't believe for that search warrant, but how did they have probable cause for the search warrant? Now, I do think, and I've always said this, why in the world, all of a sudden, out of all the people, did they put their target on him? And I just wonder, did he make some sort of confession or tell somebody he was involved in this? And that got the wheels rolling because nothing else makes sense to me.
It doesn't. We did hear in the latest hearing, we didn't hear the details of this, but there was mention that he had in some of the confessions or some of the discussions that he's had of knowledge that no one else would have had of the case. Granted, take that for what it's worth. There's been pictures, there's been speculations, there's a lot of things one could glean off of this because obviously he was a free man for quite a while after all of this. But that's kind of what the claim is of that there was some knowledge that he had no one else could have known. And I'm wondering if that's what initiated all of this to take place or if that happened after the arrest. And that's what's allowed them to feel so entitled to be as harsh as they are on him because they really believe that there's something here behind the scenes that we don't know about yet?
Well, Tony, for anyone who's followed this case, what happened to Abby and Libby is, I mean, one of the worst crimes anyone has ever seen
Hmm.
to these young girls. And so I think a lot of people believe that if indeed Richard Allen is guilty, he deserves every second he
Sure.
was in lockup. And I think all of us would agree with that to a degree.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there are laws and there's our system of justice. And it's something that's not happening to anyone else in the United States, at least that I've found,
Yeah. I mean,
where
yeah.
somebody pre conviction is put in that circumstance, unless they tried to hurt somebody
Hmm.
or, shank a officer
Sure.
or stage a prison break. Other than that, you don't do that. And uh, this case, you know, also has a lot of people with a lot of emotion. But recall too, there's two probable cause affidavits out there, and I've always said I never understood why they decided to go down the path when they have an FBI agent that said basically Ron Logan,
Hmm.
there's probable cause to believe he was responsible.
Yeah.
Call her to the stand and put down all that evidence that she found.
I mean, it makes you wonder. I mean, is this one of those things where maybe there is good, decent, probable cause on him, but at the same point, everything got mishandled so many ways that the cover up that seems to have been going on here wasn't even necessarily for the case itself. It's for the mishandling. Like we got to kind of do it this way to cover this step and that step that got done wrong. And it's snowballed into this mess that it never really needed to be because nobody wants to admit that anything was handled incorrectly when it's so glaringly true that it has.
It's glaring in this case. I agree, and I think in part it's because perhaps they believe they have the right guy,
Hmm.
but the evidence is flimsy. I'm not. I'm talking about if you cut out the confessions.
Yeah.
In other words, the geofencing, the fact his phone wasn't there, that to me is a major problem for this case for the prosecution.
Hmm. How I'm wondering about Richard Allen himself and his state of mind today. Obviously, he's today. He's not saying that he did this. He's recanting all of the 60 confessions that he's made. Um, how well does that play? Can you think of any other cases where someone has made all those confessions and then suddenly, nope, I did not do it? Obviously, we got to consider the mental health aspect of this here. But I mean, all that's going to come out in court. How is that going to play to a jury?
Well, depends on how well the defense team is able to really put forward all of these injustices and what they're legally allowed to do. Remember, Judge Gold was the one that allowed a lot of this to happen.
Hmm.
She's the one that allowed his attorneys to be removed, the one that has allowed him to be in this incarceration situation. And I don't know if you recall this, Tony, but early on in the case, they were actually recording his uh, or videotaping his meetings with his attorneys,
Hmm.
Tony.
Yeah.
Who that is just so wrong on every front. I
Yeah.
mean, no matter guilty or not guilty, you can't just completely assault and annihilate our criminal justice system
Yeah.
because the guy, you believe the guy to be guilty and or of this
Yeah. I
crime.
mean,
So that
yeah.
is one that's unbelievable to me.
That's why
They
we
put a
have
stop
trials.
to it, but it was too
Yeah,
late.
exactly. This is why we have trials. This is why you can't just convict it in public opinion, because once you have all the evidence laid out, you can decide in a much more balanced manner. Even if we do get to this trial and there does appear to be pretty damning evidence against him, let's say that there's some stuff that we don't know about, and I'm sure there is, but let's say it's just like, holy shit, this has to be the guy. He still has a pretty good chance to get another trial just because of all of the mishandlings, even if there is the damning evidence, does he not?
Well, I'm certainly not putting forth, that I'm some sort of appellate attorney But this is something that seems to be a no-brainer for
Yeah.
me in terms of having serious appellate issues. I've just named a couple, the Sixth Amendment issues that have been involved in this case. And then also, if those confessions weren't made when he was in his proper state of mind,
Hmm.
there's a lot that I think is going to be on the table for appeal if he's found guilty.
Yeah.
I think they have a long road to hoe because there's issues. I guess they're still going with this Odin defense. I'm not sure I'm necessarily buying it, but you know, all they need is one juror to buy it.
That's
And,
true.
he was being guarded by a guy wearing Odin patches, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, it's not like there wasn't Odinism being observed or practiced by some of these guards. I mean, it's flat out on the Facebook pages of some of them. It's there. I mean, how in depth they actually were they doing rituals? Were they doing anything like that, or is it just kind of like this is my thing? That's a big question. But another one that we have to wait to have answered once we get into court. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.